There's one story that everyone who has worked a job for a while has. It's the story of you're either starting a new role at the same company or you're joining a new company for the first time, and your training and your onboarding is terrible. I actually have one. I was moving positions within a company and I started my first day of the new job. I'm excited. I show up to work, and this is when I was still working in an office. They weren't ready for me. There was like a printer sitting in the desk I was supposed to sit in that I had to figure out how to get out of the way. I had to go find my own chair. No one knew that I was supposed to even be starting other than the person who hired me, but he hadn't worked on any training or anything like that for me. So I didn't know what I was even supposed to do, nor who I was supposed to talk to find out what I was supposed to do. Everyone has some type of a story like that. Maybe not that extreme, but certainly where you felt like you didn't know what it was you were supposed to be doing. And that's an experience that really in pre-sales shouldn't be happening. Welcome everyone to the Presales podcast. My name is Jack Cochran, General Manager of Presales Collective and host of the Presales podcast. Today I was talking with Rob Fallon about just this exact idea of pre-sales onboarding and academy programs. Rob has worked over his career to build academy programs at both Nutanix and Dell EMC. And in this episode, we pull back the curtain on how these corporate training programs actually work. He talks about what this actually does, both for the candidates and what you need to know, how you can get started at any point that you're at. And more than likely, you probably should be doing this even when you think like your company might not support it. So fantastic conversation today. I know I learned a lot about what it takes to get this going, some things I didn't actually even realize, but I'm really excited for you to hear it. So without further ado, let's get you right to the episode right after the break. Salio is a leading demo experience platform trusted by some of the largest software brands. Through a single unified AI-powered platform, companies can run high-stakes live demos in their native product, creating self-service tours and delivering conversational autonomous demos 24/7. Salio empowers pre-sales, sales, and marketing teams to close deals faster by reducing demo prep time, shortening sales cycles, and enhancing demo satisfaction. Check them out today at salio.io. Rob, welcome to the Presales podcast. So excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jack. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I have been looking forward to this conversation as both we at Presales Collective have had historically a Presales Academy of our own and found it to be very useful, but also like difficult to run. But I think having things available for people who are breaking into the role is very important. And I know that's something you focused at least a good portion of your career on. So out of the gate, how did you even get involved in building pre-sales academies? What led to that?
So it is true, they are difficult to get up and running and going. And I suspect some of the challenges that you faced are some of the same challenges that we are facing. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into it. I spent a lot of years at Dell EMC. And during that time, I led pre-sales programs and operations for Dell. And I inherited a program called GSAP, Global Services Associate Program. This was a program that had been started by professional services some years before I got there. And it was kind of like a quick ramp up, right? So like a 12-week boot camp and then jump into the position. They had added SEs to this. So there was some number of associates that were coming through this program that were SEs. And the challenge, it was a great program, first of all. Let me start with, it was fantastic. And there are lots of folks that I know who are now in very successful SEs and leadership positions even who started
That's fun to see.
as GSAPs. But we found it to be challenging for a lot of folks because there was an expectation that you were going to hit the ground running after 12 weeks. Now, I'm sure you know from your experience that there's no way anyone's hitting the ground running in 12 weeks. 12 weeks is a great boot camp experience, and it really gives you a great foundation, but we needed a longer runway. So we knew that we needed to really do something more like an academy. It's funny because as we were going through this, at the same time on the operational side of the business, I'll talk about a concept called inverting the pyramid. So what tends to happen with a lot of SE organizations is when you get started, you hire a lot of senior people, right? Hey, I need a great SE. I'm going to hire like somebody 20 years of experience, and we're going to pop them in and they're going to bring it. And it's
the dream, right? Yeah, of course.
It's the great way to start up a function. Hey, I quickly just need to hit the ground running. I need business. But what happens over time is organically, you never go back and like correct that. You just keep hiring more and more senior people. And then you get what's called the inverted pyramid. And I'm sure all the leaders out there know what I'm talking about. The inverted pyramid is I'm really heavy on top with very, very senior people, and I got almost nothing down at the bottom.
And like you said, it's then hard to make the case for hiring less senior people because, well, we've seen success with all these senior people. Why would we change this?
We built our entire SC go-to-market around having senior people, like just airdrop people in, and they hit the ground running with like a 1 week new hire and boom, like that's the way everybody does it. The challenge, of course, is that there's a cost associated with that. And as you mature the business, you start to look at the cost and go, you know what, this is an expensive model. If I'm doing 1-to-1 with sales or 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 or whatever it might be, I still need a very expensive SE that does not scale necessarily linearly with revenue. So the inverting pyramid is something that happened at Dell, and it also happened in Nutanix, which is interesting. It was the same phenomenon of looking at the business and going, we're upside down. We need to fix this. We need way more junior people and fewer senior people. Now, a lot of people take that like, well, you're going to cut me or whatever. It's less about that and more about having a pipeline. Just building a pipeline. And that's what we built here at Nutanix. We have a really solid field pipeline now with the business. So it was a little bit of a story to get there, but I think it's important to understand this is what starts a lot of these SE academies, because ultimately there's a notion of I want to build my own SE, but how can I justify the cost, which is important as well.
I mean, it's definitely that case when you're going, I need one more person right now. Okay, I'm going to build an academy for this one more person. And so if all you're doing is being reactive to it, and that's the reason a lot of us got caught up in this, you're never going to do it because a single hire or even two at a time isn't enough ever to justify that. You have to be thinking about it more long-term, as you were saying.
It's interesting because that is exactly the problem. Everybody wants that person now. I lost somebody. I've got a hole in my business. There's a run rate happening. I don't have time to train somebody.
And right now, the team that's there is now taking on that extra workload. And if I bring in someone who's more junior, and even if I decide to do it manually myself for a while and train them, I'm looking at now, 3-4 months of additional time that my team is more stressed out with more than they can handle.
The academy experience does not fit that. So the only way, and it happened both at Dell and here at Nutanix, the only way to do this is an executive sponsorship to basically what we call incubate. So I know in 2028, I'm going to need SEs. I'm going to invest now to build that capability so that in 2028, when that backfill position happens, I now have a bench in place. So the biggest challenge with all of these is you need the millions of dollars up front.
Right.
You need to give me the
cost.
money now.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses go, whoa, that's not how we work. Like we're not funded that way. So it needs an executive in the business who has foresight to go, you know what, this is a necessary thing. And once it's up and running, by the way, everybody loves it. It's self-funding. Once the engine, my boss calls it the flywheel of the engine. Once the engine starts, it just works from there. We've sized our academy to be roughly what we believe our attrition requirements are going to be. Roughly, we have organic growth as well, but we're not like overinvested where I'm going to have this big backlog of SEs on the bench. We really have it sized so that as those opportunities appear, I have the bodies ready to go. And there's the next set or 6-12 months behind for the next year, the next 6 months.
So is the ROI kind of from making this work for those who care about the payoff or the return on your investment for an academy, is that the removal of the opportunity cost for looking for new hires? Is it making it so you don't have that gaps? Is it the revenue attainment that you get by not having deals wait for the new person? Like what's, in your experience, been the best way to get executives to understand where the payback comes from?
There's two things you have to have. You have to have an OpEx-oriented model, not a headcount model. So if you have a headcount model, you're
that's the first hurdle for a lot.
That's the first hurdle. And we were fortunate that we were able to move to OpEx, which gave our leadership team some flexibility. Hey, I can get 2 juniors for a senior cost,
right?
Once that's in place, then you need that early investment. That early investment is extra. You got to give me the $1 million or whatever it is. From there, you get an ROI, and the ROI comes in the form of bringing in somebody who's just getting ready to be a field SE. And is with a little bit of finishing, which we can talk about what the finishing looks like. They can be productive as maybe not the most senior person, but like a mid-career person. Then you look at that and you go, okay, if I have a whole population, look at the right size pyramid, I have a whole population of people that are more junior in scope. Now, for that same less cost than I would have when I had most senior people, I'm getting more productivity out of that, right? The more senior people are focused on the business that I need them to be focused on. And in these sort of mid-market or more transactional businesses, part of the business, I have more junior people who are learning the ropes.
That makes sense. I feel like if everyone describes their ideal pre-sales organization, that's what everyone is wanting to have happen, right? Your senior people are working on the deals that require more expertise, a little more care, attention to detail, and you've got your majority of your deals that really someone with a little bit of experience that knows the product and understands how to sell basic principles should be able to pick up. But as you said, companies who out of the gate are hiring only senior people are never going to get to that model without taking the effort, the conscious effort to flip things around.
There's a lot of steps involved, right? So that's the first step. The first step is like, just fund me. Let's just get this thing going. Give me 12
get it started.
Months.
Yeah.
We're up to 18 months now. We're fortunate at Nutanix to have an existing team of folks who had come in as post-sales engineers. And when we made a business change and said, post-sales engineering is great, but we really need them focused on pre-sales because that's where our growth opportunity was. And so we took the existing team and kind of refocused them. And I think that gave us some ability to get a faster ROI than just, hey, let me just go hire 12 people and I'll see you in a year. But in any event, now that we're 18 months in, our first cohort, as we call them, is 12 months in, and they're already very productive. They're already taking sales calls. They're already doing demand gen. There's a lot of activity. There's revenue tied to their name. 12 months. And these are people who are 12 months out of graduating university.
That's impressive. You don't get there just hoping that your onboarding program put on by one person and some peer coaching. That does not get you there for sure.
No, it doesn't. You have to have a systemic approach. We were fortunate that the business invested in an SE Academy leader who came in and she brought a lot of rigor around curriculum, program, how do we do this? And I worked very closely with her on the execution side. So she was the program side. She built it all out and kind of defined what the different milestones were. And then my role was to execute that, but also work with the field. Because when you're doing an academy program, the next thing you have to get buy-in on is the field has to be willing to accept people that are not senior.
Right.
Despite my best effort, it's not possible for me to create a field-ready SE. They need at-bats. They need opportunities in front of customers. And the only way to do that is by field engagement. So a lot of the time that I've spent over the last 18 months has been working with my peers, with the managers in the field to talk about, hey, this is how we can structure your business to enable a person just coming into a field SE function to be able to be successful so that you're not expecting $1 million out of them in 6 months or something that would be unrealistic. And so that's another part of the success formula is a lot of field touches. And the funny thing, Jack, is once managers get exposed to the Academy associates, they are so energized. These associates bring new knowledge, new tech. They're learning AI in university right now. So they come out and they already know how to do AI. They already know how to code for all these new data analytics and new situations. And they have all this energy, a tremendous amount of energy. And so by exposing the field to that energy, that knowledge, the eyes start to open and they go, oh my God, how do I get that person in my business?
I love hearing that. I was just talking with a leader a couple of weeks ago about the importance of diverse teams. And you can use that term diverse in terms of, yes, in this case, it was talking about having women on the team, can be also people from different backgrounds, different cultures, but also different levels of experience is the same. And the justification if there's not just, you need to do it because it's the right thing to do. Well, you should do it because it's the right thing to do. But it's actually a benefit to your team when you have diverse areas of thought and cultures and backgrounds, because the different thought processes is a different way of thinking about things and often open your eyes to, here's a blind spot that we had that we didn't know because we've been hiring the same level of person this whole time, but someone new coming in, maybe who's just out of college, maybe who's just going through this type of associate program, they don't have all these pre-built ideas of having worked in pre-sales for the past 10, 15, 20 years. They're coming to it right now and going, that's a weird way of doing it. I would never do it that way, which you know what? Maybe that's an experience, but maybe that's something that will change the way you think about your approach as a team.
You raise a really good point. And this is actually something that's sort of the unspoken rule of these academies is it is an opportunity to break what I call the SE mold, right? So you think of a sales engineer and a certain image comes to your mind, cookie cutter, right? We are all guilty of it. I have been very, very intentional about the diversity aspect. And when I say diversity, I don't mean just the obvious stuff. I mean, like you were talking about, experience. On our team right now, we have somebody who has an undergraduate in classics and a master's in analytics. And it's just a new way of thinking about it. And what I have found in my experience is diverse teams are more successful because of exactly what you just said, which is they come at it from a different point of view. If we all come at it from the same point of view, we're going to miss that thing over there because it didn't occur to us. But when you have all this diversity, you get a much better solution. If we reimagine sales engineering as a consultative approach to the customer, it's funny because everyone's like, they're not technical enough. That person's not technical. It's like, you know what? It's actually not something I prioritize in my hiring. We don't prioritize technical. What we prioritize is technical curiosity. So we need people who lean into the technology, but I'm not looking for somebody who's going to blow my socks off with their knowledge of infrastructure and VMs and all that. What I need is somebody who enjoys technology, is an excellent communicator, and has what we call grit. They have that desire to win, that push, that urge, that desire to know and be excellent at what they do. Those are our 3 requirements for hiring. When I'm looking at candidates, that's what I look for, those 3 things. Nowhere in there is person blows my mind with their technical knowledge. You know what? I can train that. You know what I can't train? I can't train excellent communications very easily. I can't train grit at all.
Yeah. It's a great point because look at all the things that we typically test in a traditional pre-sales interview process. You're going to do a demo, which I can train you how to demo. Like, of all the things that we know how to train people on, I can train you how to run a demo. I can train you how to run a discovery, but these are the things that we test for.
You have to remember, Jack, this is a paradigm shift. So when I'm hiring for somebody that can hit the ground running now, I want all that. They need to know what they're talking about. They need to be able to do demos. They need to be good in front of a customer, blah, blah, blah. They need all that. So I understand where that's coming from. It's coming from I need somebody now. But if you start thinking about, I need somebody 2 years from now, the whole thing shifts. The whole profile shifts. Now I can hire a different profile. I can change that. By the way, 2 years from now, they're going to be ready. They're going to be doing demos and customer facing and all that stuff, but it changed our hiring profile and it gave us so much more flexibility and just opened up the door to a breadth of people who I could bring in and be excellent pre-sales engineers.
We've all definitely hired that person who was great doing all of the things in the demo round who turned out to have no skills beyond that. We've definitely had that. There's another thought I had as well while we're talking about it and thinking about sort of the justification for expanding your team by bringing the diverse areas of thought. Think back to yourself maybe 5 years ago. There were definitely things that you believed or ways that you worked or things that were part of your daily life that you would go, I would definitely not do that now anymore. Work, personal life, anything. We all continue to evolve our thinking. But if all we're doing from a professional perspective is taking the same cookie cutter and hiring the same cookie cutter, that means that we're only ever progressing as fast as the individuals on our team can think of new ideas. Why not hire the new ideas in, right? Yeah. That's kind of what this is about.
That's another big part of the focus. So our executive leader at the time said, hey, not only do I want to invert the pyramid, but I want people who think cloud native naturally, who think AI naturally. And no offense to folks my generation, but we didn't grow up with that stuff. And so for us, it's add-on to what we already knew. And so we're very comfortable with VMs or whatever that technology might be. But when it comes to the new stuff, now we're hiring people who don't even know about virtualization. Like we're past virtualization. They're not teaching that in school anymore because that's not what people are doing now. What people are doing now is containers and they're building cloud native apps with microservices and all that stuff. And so they come in, we have to go back train them, because that's where we are as a business. And so it's kind of funny, I laugh, but it's a big part of what we're trying to get is that new way of thinking about things. I want to think cloud native first because what we want to do is lead our customers. We want to go to the customer and say, have you thought about this? Because this is what everyone's doing now, and this is what works really well.
No, I absolutely love that. So let's talk a little bit about the actual academy experience. What do the actual training, what does that look like over the course of a program? There's obviously probably your typical things about typical sales training methodologies, but in the time you're going through an academy, there's got to be a lot there. So what does that include?
Yeah. Having done this a couple of times now, I see differences in the approach. When we set this up, we did a survey. We called, all the tech companies that we knew had academy programs. It's, hey, how is your academy structured? And it helped us build an infrastructure around the go-to-market. How do we make this thing successful? And what does it look like? What I found is our company, Nutanix, we're very involved in hybrid multi-cloud. There's a lot of technologies that our infrastructure, our solution touches. And so we put together a 2-year program, which is, I think, long for the industry. But what we found is that there's so much to learn. And as soon as people start touching customers, the time to train gets thinner and thinner and thinner very quickly. So we built a program. It's a 2-year program. Year 1, the first quarter is intensive education. It's all the foundations. It's all the CompTIA stuff, right? So give me all the basics. Give me all the what's technology, the landscape look like, X, Y, and Z. Then we slowly start to introduce kind of shadowing. And so you don't own a customer engagement, but just watching it. You're learning, you're seeing what it good looks like. After 6 months, you're then assigned to customers. And our training time drops down to about 50-50. So about half the time you're actually doing, and the other half the time you're still learning because the learning hasn't stopped. There's still a lot to learn. And that's year 1. And like I mentioned earlier in our discussion, we've seen people year 1 they're cranking. Like they're already doing the demos and they're already doing the customer engagements. And are they like field ready? Not quite yet, but they're doing very, very well. So that's year 2. So year 2, it's intensive. The education drops way back to a couple of cert a quarter type of thing. And then it's really all about customer touches. Are you in front of the customer? What are you doing? Are you doing boot camps? Are you doing demos? Are you doing, installs, right? All the things so that you start to build that knowledge base of actual real world experience. And that's honestly, Jack, where I need the field. That's where I have to go to the manager and say, hey, you need to drag this person out. Where we fail is when the field doesn't leverage that person and they're just kind of sitting there. And that's where we have a lot of problems. And so that's where I need the field to go, you know what? Bring them to everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Just drag them out there. They'll do it. And it will help them quickly become successful.
And I love that approach because I was just this morning teaching an operational excellence workshop. And a part of that is, okay, when you're building development plans to help your teams to grow so they can scale, what types of activities should you be looking at? And everyone always goes to think about, training is the best way to do it. Course is the best way to do it. But there's so much research and study out there that you will retain 5, 6, 7, whatever times, every study says it differently, more when you're doing something versus when you're learning about it. And I've seen a lot of academy type programs, even ours that we've had here at Presales Collective, so heavily focused on the education part of it and the practice part of it, but not the actual doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of paper certs out there. I always take certifications with a grain of salt when I'm interviewing because we've taught everybody, students, how to cram for a test and take it. And that's fine, but that doesn't mean they know how to do any of the stuff that they just passed in their certification. So I think to your point about doing, that's why for us, it's so important that it's a blend of the two, right? I actually received a lot of pushback. A lot of folks want more education up front. And I said, you know what? In my experience, education without context gets lost. You learn the thing and then it went away because you're not using it or you don't understand why that's important. As soon as you're on that customer call, boom, they're like, oh man, I really needed to know about that thing because the customer just asked me. I had no idea. And all of a sudden things start clicking and they start to understand why it's so important. We look at metrics like certs. We do things like role plays and we evaluate, hey, how did you do on presence? And did you ask good qualifying questions and all that sort of thing? We do things, obviously the activity, but the one area of sort of evaluation that is more sort of softer or more is like this brand one of how are you doing getting your name out there? How are you doing building relationships? Here's my vision of what good looks like, Jack. When I place somebody in a region, good looks like that leader comes back to me 6 months later and say, I want them to join my team. That's what good looks like.
On that metric, what's your success rate with the academy? How often are these people becoming a fully integrated part of the field teams?
Well, as I mentioned, we're 18 months in. We did transition existing teams, so I had some more senior folks. So we're up to 13 placements right now, which I'm very proud of. It's taken some time, but we're getting there and we're ramping quicker. So we're getting a couple of placements a quarter effectively. And I think at run rate, our cohorts are like 6 to 8. So the goal would be 6 to 8 placements every 6 months, which is roughly what the business can tolerate. And that's what good looks like. So the answer to your sort of other part of your question, which is kind of like, how's this been going, is really well. Like these teams are most of the time taking roles in the businesses that they're mapped to. Not always. Sometimes it didn't work out for whatever reason, right? They were too junior or another opportunity opened up and they jumped in there. But most of the time, the placement has been a good fit. The hiring leader of that business says, hey, I really think I can find a role for this person in my business. And that's worked out.
And I'm thinking back to teams that I've been on where we haven't really had a good associate level pipeline. There are always things that I'm like, this would have been a really good opportunity for someone who didn't have a lot of experience to come in, because even in the deals that are very easy, which are the ones like you get to the end, you're like, you know what, that was a pretty straightforward deal. There was no big surprises. And we kind of predicted that going in as well. That would have been a great deal for someone to go in and learn, because you still have to do all of the things. You still have to do proper discovery. You've got to engage with the customer. You have to showcase value. But there was nothing really messy that got in the way of that deal. And I went, you know what, it would have been really nice for me to have, as a senior or principal, to have focused on these 2 big deals and let someone else focus on some of these other ones. I think everyone gets the reason why this would work. Again, it's just a matter of having the resources to get something like this off the ground, but then also being able to take the steps to do it.
It's interesting. I think when I was at Dell, the leader that I worked with had a vision of the ideal district, had like all the reps, a couple of senior SEs, a band of junior SEs, and then like this shared services that was just creating kind of the bombs and configs and everything. And the idea was kind of like, how do you optimize every part of that SE process with the right resource? So kind of the right resource at the right time sort of thing. And it was exactly that. Like we want those seniors people, but we want to put them where we need them. Instead of just cranking out another bomb, I need them where this is a difficult customer or that requirement didn't quite fit. I need them to work with the customer on how can we massage that requirement to be something that we can solve.
You got to challenge the customer a little bit, maybe push them back, maybe steer the changing a little bit. Something's not as straightforward. That's difficult.
Those are advanced skills that, look, I could talk to you about it in the academy, but you're going to have to just do it a few times.
And that is something that experience definitely lends itself to. And that's, I think what we tend to forget is that there's definitely a case for having your more senior people on those more senior deals. But I also have felt the pain of I'm having to focus equal time on every deal, no matter how complex it is, where it's like, hey, come on, let's split this up a little bit.
This is part of I mentioned earlier about working with the managers, like structure their business to enable. This is exactly what I'm talking about, is where are the run rate deals, the kind of normal, give those to the new associate or to the new SE, and then reserve the more complex. And where we see success in transactional businesses, that's easier. When we get into like an enterprise where there are complex configurations, then I see pairings tend to work well, where you have like a senior person and a junior person. And then as you encounter some of those things, the junior person hands off and they go and work on the next sort of workload. And the senior person can get into the, how do I make a more advanced sale here? Those are some of the conversations that I have to kind of get to the very tail end of this thing, which is I got to place these folks. And look, they're not all going to be field ready. In fact, almost none of them are field ready out of the gate. They need that finishing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. Well, I'm looking at our time. Well, we could obviously talk about this much longer, but for the sake of keeping this podcast ready to go for people's workouts, let's try to keep the time a little bit short. 2 questions. First one, how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more? Maybe they've got some questions for when they're trying to set up an academy or they want to get started. How could they reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give out my email, rob.fallon@nutanix.com. Feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to connect and help any way I can.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes for people so you can find that. And final question, what's the final thought you want to leave people with? So it could be something we talked about. Maybe it's something new that we didn't get to, but what will be the final thought for anyone about a pre-sales academy?
I guess the final thought for me is it's an investment in the future of pre-sales. So I'm a big advocate for this career. When I discovered this career some time ago, I was an outside sales rep. And I remember sitting in a meeting and I partnered with another rep from another company. And we created kind of a complete solution. She had this guy come in to the customer meeting. He got on the whiteboard, did this whole thing on the whiteboard, and then he left the room. And I was like, oh my God, how do I do that? That's the job I want right there. And so, I have been an SE for many years. Watched a lot of changes in the technology, but fundamentally the job is exactly the same as it ever was. Nothing's really changed about the job, just the tech. And so I'm a big passionate believer in this as a career path. And I'm always disappointed to hear AI took the entry-level jobs. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. We need to invest in our future and all the benefits that we talked about in the podcast, but also just we're going to be more and more and more SCs as time goes on. Let's get the best people into this career. And that's what this is all about.
I love it. Couldn't agree more. Well, Rob, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking with me today, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for listening to the Presales Podcast by Presales Collective. Did you know that we also post on the Presales Collective blog following each episode? Head there to read through information on shows you might have missed or find another past episode to listen to. For more information on the Presales Podcast itself and to listen to those past episodes, visit presalescollective.com/podcast.